This is definitely the most thrilling doomsday survival documentary of the year. All survivors, please gather immediately to keep watch until dawn. Since the outbreak of the zombie crisis, human civilization has plunged into a long and dark night. The city has fallen, survivors are displaced, and people are struggling to survive in the endless horde of zombies. Some people choose to fulfill their duties until the very end. Some people choose to give up the struggle and become zombies. Some people sell their souls and become thugs who hunt and kill survivors. Some people spare no effort to protect the safety of their family members. I am a junior research associate at the Ocean Research Institute. This is my doomsday survival story, a memoir of the apocalyptic era. After receiving a warning text from my mentor, I established a sturdy refuge in a remote mountain ranch with my family before the doomsday outbreak. This shelter helped us withstand a brutal wave of zombie attacks, and just as we were grateful for surviving another day in this apocalyptic world, the survivors from the village below threatened to attract zombies to our mountain if we don't share our medical supplies and resources. My father and I know that most of the defensive equipment on the farm was destroyed in the previous attack, and rebuilding it will require a lot of time and resources. No matter how the current situation on the farm is, we won't be able to withstand a second wave of zombies. Once the walls are breached, there's no way our family will survive the onslaught. To avoid further harm, I decided to agree to the survivors' demands first and prepare the supplies they need early the next morning. Then I will go alone over the wall and down the hill for negotiation. Before leaving, my wife found a bunch of old magazines in the study, rolled them into tubes, wrapped them around my arms and legs, and secured them with tape in circles as a simple measure to prevent bites. The daughter contributed her English book, wrapped it in tape, and placed it on the inside of my forearm, signing her name on it very seriously. I feel like I am blessed by my whole family, and they are my strongest armor in the face of doomsday. Then I put on my father's leather coat and wrapped a thick scarf around my neck to make sure I was well protected against zombie bites. In the end, I made a simple defense armor using wooden blocks and iron pieces for my arms and outer sides of legs. These triple protective measures give me a margin for both fighting and escaping when facing zombies. After making all the preparations, I picked up the long knife my father uses to chop wood and a large bag of supplies, then went to the edge of the wall. Last night, we set up a simple hoist using the lever principle and managed to lift the old electric scooter stored in the warehouse over the wall. This will be my ride downhill. Compared to motorcycles, silent electric scooters are obviously more suitable for transportation needs during a zombie threat. Just as I was about to climb up the ladder to leave, my father lightly touched my shoulder and discreetly handed me 2 old cell phones. I know my parents are usually frugal and they never throw away old phones. They have hoarded more than 10 old phones over the years, but all of them are old models with surprisingly loud volume. I picked up the phone with a cold look in my eyes. The skills we used to fend off the zombie horde gave us inspiration. Noise not only can distract zombies, but also attract them. If negotiations with them fail, the noise can be used to escape in a critical situation, while eliminating potential enemies. This group of survivors at the bottom of the mountain, if they think they can take me down easily, they're sadly mistaken. But this is also a last resort, as a slight mishap could also put oneself in danger, so it should not be used lightly. I have put away the phones and set them to maximum volume in advance, making sure that the music player page is always open. Then I took a deep breath and, under the watchful eyes of my family, climbed over the wall. The electric scooter lay alone outside the wall, surrounded by piles of zombie bodies. As I stood on the ground, I felt a sticky sensation, as if I were stepping in a swamp. The overwhelming stench almost knocked me out, but I tried my best not to look at the zombies' gruesome sight as I carefully lifted my feet. Just as I was about to approach the electric scooter, those zombies that I thought were already dead suddenly got up and staggered towards me. Despite being pierced by spears and animal traps all over their bodies, they are still driven by their thirst for blood and flesh. Their bodies torn apart, they still charge forward without hesitation. I was caught off guard by the sudden change and got tackled by a zombie out of nowhere. It started biting my arm crazily, while other zombies around me also regained their strength and started closing in on me from all directions. Just at the critical moment, I mustered a huge amount of strength out of nowhere, forcefully pushed away the zombie on me, quickly got up, grabbed the spear that was stuck in the ground yesterday, and ruthlessly nailed that zombie to the ground. At this moment, there are still other zombies crawling towards me, their constant growls echoing in my ears. Like being in hell, I kicked over the nearest walker, then stumbled and lunged for the electric bike, twisting the handle hard and leaving all the walkers behind me. After rushing several miles up the mountain road, I finally managed to catch my breath, threw the electric bike to the side, and quickly raised my left hand to check. My heart was almost pounding out of my throat. Fortunately, the zombie didn't bite through my protection. I only saw a few black teeth deeply embedded in the wooden block on my forearm, completely piercing through the block and leather jacket, leaving a row of teeth marks on the magazine. If the zombie had bitten a little deeper, I would have become one of them today. I hastily wiped off the zombie blood on my arm, tried to calm down my panic, and began to recall the scene that had just happened. Just like we observed in the deep pit earlier, these zombies have incredible vitality, and even severe head injuries can't completely kill them. A chilling thought crossed my mind. If spears can't kill them, can gasoline and flames really destroy them for good? To confirm my idea, I rode my bike along the rough mountain road to a deep pit in the forest. Then, I witnessed a scene that I will never forget. At the bottom of the pit, filled with ashes and coke, the zombies that had not burned completely were still crawling slowly with their bodies burned to black charcoal. There were countless layers upon layers of them. Their vocal cords had been destroyed by the fire, unable to make any sound, yet they still tried their best to let out silent roars. I slowly knelt down beside the deep pit, feeling a strong sense of exhaustion washing over me. Tears of fear silently ran down my face. Do we really have hope of defeating this level of zombies? I stood silently by the edge of the pit for a long time, then I slapped myself hard, finally pulled myself together, and staggered towards the electric scooter on the side. No matter what, as long as we're still breathing, we have to keep fighting and living, just like our human ancestors did when they emerged from the primitive forests 10,000 years ago. Never give up hope. I'm cheering myself on in my heart. I then rode my electric scooter all the way down to the foot of the mountain, and the whole village looked like it had been through a fierce battle. Burning vehicles and collapsed walls are everywhere, with a large number of zombies wandering aimlessly outside the village's broadcast station, filling the entire cement road. I hid my electric scooter in the woods. Then I bypassed the zombie horde to reach the village entrance. As I was searching for survivors, I suddenly heard a sharp whistling sound in my ears. A figure in a military coat suddenly darted out from the corner, grabbed my arm, and pulled me aside, just as an arrow whizzed past and stuck where I had been standing. It dawned on me that someone had just tried to ambush me with a bow and arrow. The dark figure signaled for me to follow him. We passed through a deserted old house overgrown with weeds, circled around the village to make sure there were no pursuers or zombies behind us, and finally entered a peaceful courtyard. I leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. Before I could thank him, the figure took off his mask, revealing a middle-aged man. He glanced at me and said helplessly, "You shouldn't come down the mountain alone. They have compound bows and have been ambushing you for a while. They never planned to let you go from the beginning." I was stunned for a moment. Then my brain kicked into high gear. Finally, it dawned on me that the man in front of me and the group who forced me down the mountain through the radio belonged to two different factions. I couldn't help but sigh. The doomsday has just begun, and the survivors are already divided. The man reached out and pulled me up, introducing himself as the village chief. He mentioned that he had spoken with my father over the phone before the communication was cut off due to the mobile base station being destroyed. They lost contact with the mountain. The person who contacted us through the broadcast yesterday was a young person from the village who had returned from elsewhere. They probably had someone injured and needed medicine, so they resorted to this measure. I felt a surge of annoyance. Given their unhesitating arrow just now, I had reason to suspect they intended to capture me alive and then use me as a hostage, continuously demanding supplies from my father's farm. The village chief nodded in agreement with my assessment and said, "Who made you the most prepared? Under doomsday, no one can withstand moral judgment. Why should you be able to stay in a safe shelter while others struggle to survive outside? Young man, I'm not blaming you, just telling you the reality of most people's thoughts now. Until doomsday arrives, our biggest enemy is still the survivors themselves." After listening in silence, I finally said helplessly to the village chief, "Before the survivors start fighting each other, I just want to ask one thing. Do you really know how terrifying the zombie horde outside is?" I didn't expect the village chief to give me a cold look. His answer was meaningful. "Perhaps I know more than you think." Then he gestured for me to follow him through the courtyard. Behind the yard is an underground parking lot. When we opened the garage door, we found a survivor camp inside, where a group of villagers had gathered. I silently followed the village chief through the crowd, and noticed that the other people were just lying there numbly. Their faces were pale and their lips were dry. It was then that I realized they were in a state of extreme shortage of supplies. The village chief led me into a storage room, and as soon as I entered, I smelled a foul odor. I saw a young man covered in blood lying in front of me. If I hadn't noticed his chest moving slightly, I would have almost thought he was a zombie. However, this person's body is showing severe signs of varicose veins, and their pupils are already dilated, making them look like they're about to turn into a zombie. Just when I thought this poor bystander was about to transform after being bitten by a zombie, the village chief casually mentioned that there were no bite marks on him. He had accidentally fallen from the 3rd floor and broke his spine. Currently, there are no conditions to perform surgery on him, and he probably won't live much longer. I glanced at the village chief with suspicion, then put on gloves to inspect the young man's pupils and check his body condition. I was sure he was showing clear signs of decomposition. At first, I thought the village chief was wrong in his judgment, so I carefully looked for zombie bite marks on the young man, but I couldn't find any bite marks on his body. I glanced at the village chief, and he returned my gaze with a cold stare. I was shocked for a moment, and a sense of impending doom suddenly crept up from the bottom of my heart. A cold sweat broke out on my back instantly. The village chief spoke with a tone of despair, saying that according to your father, you are a top-notch biology graduate student. You should be able to tell that this person, even if not bitten by a zombie, is on the verge of turning into one due to being in a near-death state. Before that happens, all the villagers who died accidentally in the village experienced corpse transformation after death. Do you know what this means? My mind felt like a lightning bolt had exploded. Then I slowly lifted my head, wiped the cold sweat from my forehead, and looked at the young man in front of me who was about to complete his transformation. I said, just as coldly, "This means the virus has already spread through the air worldwide, and we are all carriers of the virus. Every survivor, including you and me, is a potential zombie right now."